And he goes, so many professional players come out of doing that for so long because it's gotten comfortable that when they apply to the real world, people go, okay, it doesn't really matter. You're good at volleyball. Like, I don't care. What skills do you have?
Welcome to the SuccessFlow podcast, where our mission is simple: to be better each day and relay our findings with other relentless humans defining success for themselves. If that sounds like you, let's begin.
Crawford, I don't know if you're ready for this. Quite the episode that we have planned today. We've got an amazing guest, and he's our tallest guest. He's the first one that we've had on that's taller than either one of us. You're 6'4", I'm 6'5", but this guy is 6'8", 6'9", 7 foot. We don't even know. He just keeps growing and growing.
Nobody knows.
He's he might be pushing 40, but this guy's he's growing and you can't stop. But Ted Liles, one of our best buddies, we hang out all the time. He was Phoenix Business Journal's 40 under 40 last year and did some amazing things in college that we're going to get into, some really cool adventures and experiences that he had. Married to a beautiful woman named Jenny, 2 beautiful children. This guy has it all. You can't stop him from being dominating everything that he does in his professional life, a managing principal at Cressa Commercial Real Estate, and he just crushes it. So no better guest that we could have on the SuccessFlow podcast than Mr. Ted Liles. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, and I appreciate the hype. Yeah, nobody knows how tall I am. I am getting older. I am better looking than both of you. For anybody that is going to be watching this, just make it.
That's debatable.
Okay, all right. Yeah, but thanks for having me, guys. I'm stoked to be here.
Well,
We're excited to have you. You have been mentioned on this podcast before. We did a descriptive shout out to you when we were talking about music and its impact on being able to change your state and get you focused. So that was a little preview of this episode, and awesome to finally have you on.
Yeah, guys, I'm so stoked to be here.
That episode that we did, that's when we talked about the street legal face melters. I'm pretty sure that was episode 5 when we were just getting going, and we introduced everybody to street legal face melters, which we'll have to put back in the show notes. But it's a playlist that Mr. Tedro sent to us, and we love it. It's a great playlist for when you're ready to knock some tasks out, when you're ready just on a long drive or whatever, and you just need to get lost in your thoughts and you get upbeat and very positive. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my hat here. It says LIT, Get Lit for Liles Industrial Team, which is Ted's alter ego. He does some amazing things in his professional world, but we like to get lit every once in a while and have a good time.
Getting lit right now.
Dude, it's nonstop.
Yeah, Playboy, let's do it.
All right, Ted, take us back, man. Where'd you come from? How'd you get to where you are today? Give us some background.
Yeah. So the journey's been a journey, without question. Born and raised in Tucson. I am a U of A Wildcat fan for anybody who's out there that loves the Cats. But
everybody has their flaws.
Born and raised in that's fair. Born and raised in Tucson. Grew up. My mom sold used cars ads, and my dad worked on the railroad. When I was 9 years old, my dad passed away. There was a mix-up at the hospital, and unfortunately, 2 people passed away by getting the X-rays mixed up. So that kind of put us in me and my brother and my mom in a kind of a challenging spot for a while. And my mom toughed through it, and she's a champ. I love her to death, and one of my favorite people. And when I was 11, she started dating a guy who's been now my dad for 30 years. It's crazy how, kind of looking back, it's unfortunate that my dad had passed away, but the new person, or my new dad, call it my stepdad, but Pete Backus, he goes by Pedro, stepped in my life and was really critical on kind of helping develop me to who I am today. And I say that sometimes blessings happen in weird ways, because we were a really, really humble family. Didn't have much. My mom started dating Pedro, and he was a residential developer. And so I got to see kind of at a young age what the component of work hard and play hard really is. And I got to do all kinds of fun trips with them. We always had great trips everywhere where we went. And it allowed me the opportunity to join club volleyball, which he was devastated when I stopped playing basketball and I wanted to start playing volleyball because I couldn't chew gum or stay out of the net at the same time. And it allowed me to play. And kind of during my volleyball career, by the time I was going into my senior year, I was one of the top recruits in the country. Ended up being number 9 on the Fab 50 list, and I chose to go to Long Beach State to play volleyball there. At Long Beach State, I wanted to be an engineer, and my first day of class, I went to my first math class and realized really quick that I did not want to be doing a lot of homework, nor did I want to be going down that route.
Numbers weren't for you. It wasn't happening.
No. And I was like, I want to have as much fun as humanly possible here at college, and I want to do the least amount of work that I can. And they're like, all right, you're going to go into communications. I was like, perfect.
We call that optimal minimal.
That's exactly right. Had a pretty good career at Long Beach State. Graduated in 2007. And I'd been with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, for a while. And I was debating whether or not to go overseas to play professional volleyball or kind of double down on real estate. And so I had enough credits to graduate in 4 years. I decided to stay a 5th year because I had redshirted. And my last year, I had independent study, which meant that I didn't have any school at all. And I realized pretty quickly that I can be quite the degenerate when I'm not applying myself to things. So my first semester of my senior year, I partied way too much. I was out. I was being kind of dumb. And so I went to the counselor. I said, hey, I want to get into real estate. And they're like, one of the boosters happens to he owns a real estate company here in Long Beach. So my senior semester at Long Beach, while I was playing volleyball, I was learning the real estate game in the morning until I'd have to go to practices or play games. So, post graduation, it was, hey, do I want to go play overseas or do I want to double down on real estate? And I doubled down on real estate. So,
what do you think? What do you think made that decision? Like, was it just because you had already met Jenny by then, and you're like, I don't know if we can do this global thing?
Yeah, a part of it is I really like Jenny. She had been in a previous relationship with somebody who had gone over to play like professional basketball overseas, and she told me, she's like, "Hey, go for it, but understand that we're just going to kind of be pals. I can't do this again." And I was like really burnt out of volleyball at the time, and I was like, you know what, I want to do this, but I kind of had a little inkling of regret that was like, man, I should have done that. And sometimes blessings happen because I got a call from the USA national team shortly after that, and they said, "Hey, we understand that you're not going overseas to play. Do you want to come in and train?"
No way.
And do you want to come in and train? So I went to my boss who had hired me, and I said, "Hey, do you care? I'm going to train with the USA national team from 8 until 11 every morning, and then I'll come in and I'll work." And he's like, "You got to take it up." So in 2007, I was a punching bag for the best players in the world. And they ended up going on to win the 2008 gold medal at the Olympics indoor volleyball.
That's awesome.
It was really, really awesome in that realm. And I'll never forget kind of this unique experience that had happened. I was on the training table. It was the way that it works is there's like 8-week blocks when you come in and train, and then you can get re-invited back. And it was like my last day, and I remember the coach, Hugh McCutcheon, said, "Hey, we'd really like to have you back. We like your energy." And I was like, "Nah, you know what? I think I'm gonna focus on the real estate side of it." And I remember being in the training room, and a guy that was several years older than me, his name was Jason Ring. He we were chatting, and he goes, "Hey, like you're not coming back. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing real estate." He's like, "Oh man, that's really awesome." He goes, "Yeah, I'm a contractor on the side, but that's good because, when you're over there, you can get stuck in places where they're not speaking your language. Weather conditions are terrible. You're confined to your room and all you do is play Xbox and all that stuff. Like, good for you for applying yourself, like right on." And for whatever reason, that just really, really stuck with me. Like I was thinking bigger. And he's like, "Man, I wish you the best." And it was just one of those conversations that after I left, I'm really happy I did it because I checked that box. I didn't have any regret on not going to go overseas. But he was just like, "Yeah, man, like, you can be over there playing and they pay you on a weekly or monthly basis, and blow out a knee or sprain an ankle. They're not paying you during that time. And you just tend to pick up a lot of really bad habits because you're at practice for 5 hours a day. And what do you do with the rest of your time? It's either you're partying or you're playing video games." And he goes, so many professional players come out of doing that for so long because they've gotten comfortable that when they apply to the real world, people go, "Okay, it doesn't really matter. Good, you're good at volleyball. Like, I don't care. What skills do you have?"
What's a veteran, like how old are you when you're retired? Like, let's say you made a full career out of it. When would you, like mid 30s, like just any other pro sports, mid late 30s?
Yeah, mid 30s.
Yeah, so you're coming out of that thing and you're like, okay, now what does the rest of my life look like? And if you didn't prepare for it, you're kind of like, shit.
Yeah. No. It was a great thing. It was really hard because I had a lot of friends that were in that realm where they would go and travel to see other friends, and they'd be like, "Hey man, like, why don't you come on this trip?" And I'm like, "Well, I can't. I work." And they're like, "Well, you work too much." And I'm like, it was just one of those things that built fire where it's like, okay, you're right. I have an obligation. I have to work and I can't go and play. But the time and energy that I took sticking with my commitments to work has paid off exponentially. And I have friends that are now getting out of the professional realm saying like, "Hey, what am I supposed to do?" kind of deal. And it's like, apply yourself, like figure out what that next landscape is to compete in. And that's something that really attracted me with real estate is I learned really quickly that I can compete in another component and like in another realm. And I just love to compete. I don't need to be the best, but I like being a team player. I like camaraderie. I like all that stuff. So it's been great and crazy to think that I've been doing it for 18 years.
Awesome kind of background to get us rolling here. And it's that back to that business athlete mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And that transition is much more natural when you're used to competing, showing up as a team, collaborating. And it translates right into business. It's just knowledge work as opposed to our physical bodies. I think one of your most people, especially in the men's group that we're in, Junta, would agree that your biggest strength by far, or one of them, is the amount of energy you show up with in a room. And I mean that sincerely. You're a fun guy as well, and you bring a good time. But I mean a level of energy that is vibratory, and it impacts the entire room before you even say a word. Was curious has that always been the case? Is that something that you're being intentional about? Because I know that we have natural gifts and whatnot, but it's pretty special. I was curious if that's something that's been with you your whole life, or are you intentionally cultivating that day in, day out?
Probably at times, yes. But I mean, I've always been kind of a ball of energy. If I'm in a group kind of deal, I want to have the group feel like they're a group. I don't like having anybody feel like outsiders or whatever. So really welcoming. But I've always been loud. I've always been too loud, as most would say. But no, it's kind of been who I've been since the beginning. I remember my freshman year in college, I was struggling. I was a little bit homesick. And a lot of the upperclassmen didn't understand that energy. And so they kind of made fun of me about it. I remember calling my mom and I was like, "Mom, I want to come home." And she's like, "You're being such a bitch." Kind of one of those comments. And it was like, all right, cool. She's like, just handle it. Right. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to change who I am. They're either going to figure it out and like me or figure it out and not like me. And I was like, I'm not changing. So after a while, it just, they accepted me and realized that I was going to be a loud guy with a lot of energy. So
you definitely bring, as Phil said, bring the energy, but it's fun. It's like all in good nature. And it's all like whenever there's a dull moment, we can always count on you to like lift everyone up. Or if there's but you respect the seriousness of certain situations too. It's not like it's
Totally.
annoyingly like, dude, Ted, like we're talking about some things. And so that's what's really great about what you bring to the table just in everyday life. And your mom sounds like a tough cookie. I'm sure she, obviously with your backstory with your biological father, like what that was like for her with two sons
Yeah.
and, growing up that way. I appreciate you sharing that story. I did not actually know that. And I don't know how often you share that story, but that's, the way you're brought up and that's an impact on how you are the rest of your life. So, who knows, didn't have that big of a relationship because of your age. Maybe he was very similar that way, or maybe your mom is, and you get a piece of that. And you kind of wonder like, how much did I get from my biological parents? And, I got pieces of my dad, I got pieces of my mom, and, Phil, you ask those questions for yourself as well. And it's interesting. But it sounds like you had a great mom there, bro.
Yeah, no. And my dad was awesome and very much the same way. He was loud with a ton of energy.
Yeah.
He was this guy that had even like broader shoulders than I did or than I do. And he had friends everywhere. He had a deep Rolodex of friends, so much so that some people kind of here in the working realm have over the years have come up to me and they're like, hey, you're Liles. Like that's kind of a random name. Are you, a part of like the George Liles family? And I'm like, holy shit, like,
wow,
he died 30 years ago.
That's impact, dude.
And yeah, it's kind of interesting on that, but yeah, we definitely, I think that I certainly carry some qualities there, mixed with some qualities from my mom, and then sprinkled in with being a little not so rough around the edges with with my dad and my stepdad Pedro, and kind of the foundation that he brought me up in. So, yeah.
I think what the other thing is like being able to count on you. Like, so we're at the Waste Management Open, right? We go to the concert at the Coliseum. We didn't go together, and we're all walking out. May have had a few too many waters, but it was a great time out there. And we're walking through the crowd, and I see you, and I'm like, obviously that's Ted. And so I run up and I jump on your back, and I'm like, what's up, dude? We're all going to Nate's house, and and you're just like always down. Like you're always down to have a good time. You're always down to make things happen. And you're like, does Nate know about this? And I go, yeah, I'm pretty sure he doesn't care. You're coming. And I was like, text him. And sure enough, and I remember when I arrived, you were already there, and you're like, I told you I was fucking coming. And then we had a great time, and we just kept it rolling. And that's what we love about you, man.
You want to know, I'm stoked because that's not always the case. It can't always be there, right? I suffer from FOMO so hard, but because of the interactions that our wives have had within the group, right? My wife feels comfortable, doing that. Like if it was just some random, if she didn't know you or didn't know that there was going to be people from that group there, she would have been like, I'm not really comfortable with that. And then I may have still come and she would have gone home, but she was like, no, let's do this. Like it's a blast. So that was a really, really fun night.
That is just a perfect tee up for one of the things that I wanted to discuss. You bring up Jenny, and like all three of us on this call, we've got some very strong women that are a part of our team unit. And when before I got married, I was always like, I love the concept of a power couple. Like, I don't want to be the shining star rock of my relationship. I want to be on a team that's just like viewed as that's a power couple. And that's exactly what you and Jenny are. And not to mention you're playing for the same team, not only in the family, but in business as well. So, and I didn't know about Jenny. I didn't know Jenny was a net beast chaser. I didn't know she had a type on the volleyball court. So tell us a little bit about Jenny. I love the story about how you met when you were young, and walk us through that and tell us about that family.
Jenny is an absolute blessing to me. Jenny is my first girlfriend. I met her in college. I'll never forget the night that I met her. It was it was the 5th of July. I was so hungover from the night before. I was like, I'm never going to drink again. Driving back to my house, my buddy's like, dude, you got to come down to the beach and play. And I was like, I'm not going to play. I'll just come down and sit on the beach. We get down there and he's like, Dude, I ran into some girls on the 4th of July. You got to help me out. They're both pretty good looking. Let's go grab a drink at Sharky's. And I was like, nah, man. And he's like, dude, I'm buying. I was like, yeah, all right, cool, of course, right?
Tough sell.
And I was like, all right, yeah, folded like a wet napkin. And I remember going in there, and these two gals came. And I was like, wow, this girl's really, really hot. So, stuck around for a few more beers. And then we went over to a house and hung out for a little while. And the next morning, I've never done this before in my life, but I had a flip phone and I had a voicemail, and it was a voicemail from me. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So I answer it. What I wouldn't do to have this voicemail, I answer it, and it's me leaving myself a message. Hey, Ted, this girl, Jenny Liles, is hot. She's cool. Don't mess around. Call her today and ask her out on a date. Don't.
It was like a reminder voicemail, so you didn't drop the ball. Oh my gosh, correct. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and mind you, at this time, I'm driving a PT Cruiser, moonroof, chrome alloy wheels, right? Real Dude. Panty dropper. And so I call her up, and she's like, yeah, I'll go on a date. I'm just giving you a heads up. Like, I just got done with a relationship, so I'm not looking for anything. And I was like, let's go have fun. So take her. I'm trying to kind of process. And again, I'm a very shallow soul at this time of my life, right? I was, on a great volleyball team. I was starting. I was attractive. Like, it was just, if there was any flaw that I could find, I would find it. So I'm like, you know what? I want to take her to this burger joint on the side of the road called MVP Burger in Long Beach. And I was like, all right, great. And if she orders a salad, like, whatever, boring, we're done. And that's kind of like how shallow I was kind of at the time, just like I'd have these crazy things. So we get up to the window, and she's like, yeah, give me a double cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke. I was like, oh, damn, all right. I go to place my order, and I give them my credit card, and they're like, it's a cash only place. And I'm like, I don't have cash. And she's like, all right, well, I got cash. Here you go. So she paid for her first date. And then I was like, I have to take you out on a real date. So I did. I took her out on a date, and a right one, and I actually paid for that meal. But
dude, I don't know if that's shallow. I think there's something to that. Because I remember similar situations where, like, I would go on a date, and this chick in college was like window shopping with like, we're on a date, and she's like window shopping high heels, and the stores were closed, and it just like turned me off. I was like, is this materialistic? Yeah. I didn't really like it. And I was like, I remember telling my buddy, I didn't have long-term girlfriends either. And Kim, my wife, was like my longest girlfriend after 3 months. Like, I just didn't date girls for a long time. Right. And so I always remember telling, I lived with my sister for a few years in college. I remember telling my sister, I was like, Shannon, I just want to find someone that'll drink a beer and smoke hookah with me. That was like all I wanted about, like, it just, I don't even smoke hookah at all anymore. I don't drink beer at all anymore. But back then, when I was 21 years old, that's all I wanted. And here comes Kim to our condo day parties, and she was smoking hookah and playing Edward 40 Hands with us. And I mean, it's just like match made in heaven. Yeah. It's like so much fun, right? Like, there's nothing too serious about it.
Yeah, no doubt. So anyways, she was my longest girlfriend at the 2-week mark. That had been my longest relationship. So yeah. And we've been together now 18 years. We'll going on married 15 in May. And it's crazy. It's been a journey, but back to Jenny, she is an absolute beast, wildly motivated, very smart. She got a master's in psychology. She wanted to become a school counselor, realized that was going to be a little bit heavy. She got into running Montessori schools, which she did. And that actually brought us from California to Arizona. And she was running Montessori schools and just really, really frustrated, just dealing with kind of shitty parents that like drop their kids off and they're like, hey, you need to take care of her kids and brush their teeth and do that kind of stuff. It weighed on her. And I had just started making a little bit of progress in the real estate realm here in Phoenix. And I said, hey, you enjoy managing. Why don't you try to manage something else? And she's like, well, what? And I was like, I don't know, maybe look at becoming a property manager. And through some mutual connection, Jenny ended up landing on the top industrial property managers on her team. And so her learning curve was exponential. There's a lot of synergies because she was representing the landlord on a lot of the stuff with the same tenants that I represent. So we'd always have these battles, but my learning curve in being able to mitigate risk for my clients just increased so much over that 3 or 4 year term that she was a property manager. And then she eventually got kind of cherry picked within the company to help run the Cushman and Wakefield office for Phoenix and help manage the brokers. So she oversaw 100 brokers and was working her way up. And then there was an opportunity to come over to Cressa and work for Cressa directly for the president, implementing strategies for the 55 offices of Cressa throughout the country. So we are at the same company. We alternate days that we go into the office and when we stay at home. And she's also currently she's the president of the Commercial Real Estate Women's Network, which is a very, very big network here in Arizona. And she's making some really positive changes there. But yeah, she's a beast, right? She's like, one day I'm going to be the boss. You're going to have to step down. And there's a part of it where I hope that she can be the boss and I can keep doing the same thing that I'm doing. But she's amazing. I'd be dead without her. And she's an awesome mom and best friend and a complete rock star.
I remember the first time we grabbed lunch and you said that to me because we just getting to know you and you're like, yeah, I'd be dead without her. And I was like, Jesus. And you said it with such conviction. And then when you unpacked it, how you just did for us, it made total sense. So I love to hear it. So I think that also leads us into you are running some very, very complex, big time deals. And given just the state of all markets right now, talk to us a little bit about what you love about your industry, because I know you're passionate about it. Some of the stuff that you've produced in regard to marketing, I've learned a lot, just getting to know your business a little bit, and the way that you approach it, super refreshing and it's exciting. So tell us what you're seeing right now, what you love about the business, and what you're doing kind of day in, day out.
Well, I'm going to answer that next, but just to give some clarification. So what I'm so passionate about is tenant representation or occupier representation. And why that matters is that in the realm of commercial real estate, people or companies that focus exclusively on what I do, corporate real estate strategy on representing tenants or organizations that require space, is less than 1% of the entire commercial real estate realm. So it's a very, very niche that we're in. And I work for a great company that I love, but it's great. It's refreshing in my space because I only represent have to answer to one person, and that's my client. So the companies that I represent, that's all I represent. Whereas full service brokers have the ability to represent tenants, they have the ability to represent landlords, and then they have the ability to sell the investments and hopefully retain those listings. And so in my space, I can say, hey, what I do is conflict free. I do it really, really well, and it doesn't cost you anything. So it's taken me, 15 years to build that elevator pitch, but it's more or less there. I have people listening, and I love what I'm doing. But now to get to the question that you're asking, I'm going to answer the question specific to the realm that I track, and that's industrial warehousing. Manufacturing, e-commerce, supply chain, logistics. Those are kind of my industries. And it's been crazy. Call it pre-COVID. If you would have asked me, hey, where are we in the market cycle? I would have said that hey, we're probably at the bottom of the 8th inning. Things are going to be resetting. Come March of 2020, the world stopped, which was a really, really challenging time for everyone because nobody knew what COVID was going to end up happening. And then call it by June of 2020, the spigot turned on, and I went from being like, okay, busy, to I'm drinking through a fire hose. Like, it'd never been busier. And so with that, with all the pent up demand, and there's been a ton of development, right now,
now, that was probably because, sorry to cut you off here, Tim, but that was probably because most people went online and were selling like masks and Etsy products and all sorts of stuff, or was that too small?
No. You're exactly right. So kind of the big shift that happened, that occurred, and why all of a sudden there's all this demand is, one, the supply chains got totally broken, right? So when you're relying on other countries and those goods aren't coming, so companies started stockpiling what they could. There's that component. Users had to go and do e-commerce, right? They ended up having to order their groceries online, or you couldn't go to department stores, so you were ordering clothes online. And call it your people that were 40 and younger, they were already doing it. The people that were 40 and older, and people that are resistant to doing it because they like doing it their way, they were forced to do it. And in fact, they loved it, right? So the whole online marketplace deal exploded. And because of that, a lot of groups required a lot more space. And, on the logistics modeling side, typically people, were rationing, their inventory for just in time, right? So that's kind of how the cycles would fly through the warehouse. Well, when those disruptions came and they couldn't restock the warehouse, you had companies that were pivoting to, hey, just in case, now we're going to stockpile all this product, so that, everybody was expanding. So that kind of helped. It was a perfect storm. That was an amazing storm. Literally a fall, something fell from heaven, literally, and landed in my lap, right? Industrial before that had always kind of been the redheaded stepchild to office or retail. And then all of a sudden, now I'm like the golden child, and industrial still doing well. But there are some concerns that are happening right now. There's concerns that it's being, nationally, that demand is slowing a little bit. Rents have gotten really, really expensive, and the demand is slowing. And there's all this development that's coming online. So now you have all these developers that have anticipated that the demand would be there. These buildings are delivering. Now there's, for example, at the end of last year, there was 25 million square feet of industrial product that delivered. There's another 35 million square feet that's still in the pipeline, and demand has slowed way down. So all these properties are delivering at the same time. And there's a lot of concern from landlords on, hey, am I going to be able to get the rents that I was able to, get the financing with and all that stuff? So there's creating some challenges in that space. But in my realm, because I don't represent landlords and I don't have to worry about leasing space, it was challenging during that time because I was like the bearer of bad news. When I tell you it was hot, like, hey, there's one option that works for you. This is the deal. And somebody's like, well, hey, I got to sleep on it over the weekend. You beg them not to. And then on Monday, they call you and they say, hey, I'm ready to move forward with it. And you're like, that's gone, right? And that was happening all the time. Or having the conversations with somebody that's saying, hey, your rent's going to double, and having to get them to understand that there's not an alternative, cheaper location. And now with all this product that's coming available, it's allowing me the opportunity to go out and leverage, buildings and spaces, because now there's more than one option. There's 25 options, and really start to leverage them against each other so that my clients get the best deal. And it's been, on my end, I see a tremendous amount of opportunity, so long as I can continue to remain focused, laser focused on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
On that's really helpful for the listeners to kind of put into perspective what you're actually working on day in and day out, and double clicking on that.
Yeah.
And in a specific kind of instance, and we don't need to talk necessarily the names or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's up to you. But there was a specific situation that you broke down for us that I thought was a real pivotal moment for our men's group, Junto, in which that most people, I think, when we talk about discipline and getting out of our comfort zone. You had one of the most uncomfortable situations and a pretty key decision to make regarding it with your top customer at the time, or one of them.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
was, you were hitting a bandwidth issue on this focus piece where a lot of
Yeah.
your time was being spent. And so I was hoping you could lean on this, because
Yeah.
I learned a lot from that scenario from the sideline, and
Eh,
wanted you to kind of break
yeah.
down what went through your mind during that situation.
Yeah. So here's kind of for the listeners, like a high level, background. I had a national client that had 55 locations throughout the U.S. I had represented them for several years, and the challenge that I was having is that it was a perfect scenario of too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And in terms of rolling out, plans and consistency with reporting and whatnot, well, there ended up being like 6 people in the room at one time to make decisions, and nobody could figure it out, and everyone would point fingers at each other, and it created a pretty substantial time suck, and ultimately I got to a point where I did not have any more time to focus on any of my other clients. It was demanding so much time, and time and again I'd say, hey, we need to sit down and we got to work through these bottlenecks, and I know where the bottlenecks are, and it'd be like, yeah, okay, well, I really don't want to meet. And so when it came up, the group came up for the renewal, I was debating whether or not to fire my biggest client, which was $750,000 in revenue. Wow. And I didn't necessarily have like it backfilled, but hey, I need to create some space. And so I did it. Now I'll never forget. So with this company, the part that was so unique was that individually, working with different members of the team individually, they were fantastic. They were really, really great. But collectively, they couldn't get on the same page, and it was all about pointing fingers. And it was really, really hard to row in the right direction. And I say that because now that I parted from that company, and I helped them transition to their new company, and even helped build the kind of the proposal template so that they were getting what they needed. I didn't have the bandwidth. And it's funny because now several of those members have left that company to join other companies in a real estate related facet, and I'm doing work for them for their companies across the country. So it's kind of, it's one of those things that even when I made the decision that it was time for me to move on, it was really, really hard to get my brain wrapped around it. And it was tough looking at my team saying, hey, I'm not really sure how I'm going to backfill it. But I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to leave with any hurt feelings. And so doing that afforded additional opportunities for me today. But yeah, no, I made that move, a lot of prayer, a lot of soul searching. The guys in that room were the people that I really respect their opinions. And I took all their thoughts to heart. And when I ended up making that decision to part ways, within like 45 days, I backfilled it with 3 new national clients, and clients that really appreciate, my the thoughtfulness that I put into how do you strategize the real estate. So it's been a journey, and it, who knows?
That's awesome. I love that story. And I remember you telling us that story. And I think we even chatted after, because I had a very similar situation with my payroll business. Within our first year of being in business, we brought in our largest client. It was like, we were a small business, and it's like 250 employees. It was a big account. They outgrew us they grew to like 900 employees in 7 different states. And for us, it's like the bandwidth. We had like a team of 3. And it was like all of our resources were going to this one client for all of their needs to make sure that everything was being processed correctly. And we ended up having that conversation with our client mutually of like, hey, we understand what's happening here. You guys are outgrowing us, and we're okay with that. But it was very scary. I remember looking at it as the mindset. I was like, well, they just paid for my one employee for a full year. To us, a $50,000 revenue client was massive. Like payroll is very cost effective. Right. And, but it was that mindset that you had as well. It's like, I don't know what we're going to do, but this is what we're going to attempt to do is we're going to backfill this thing as fast as we possibly can. And sure enough, we did in about the same amount of time frame, 45, 60 days with 25 new clients that recoup that revenue, that annualized revenue. And now we've got 25 smaller, happier, more in line with who we work with.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's hard for people. It's like my largest client, like I'm going to fire them or they're going to let me go. And what am I going to do? Am I going to sit back and be like, well, that sucks. Life's over. I'm not going to be able to come back from this. Like, no, like double down, backfill what you need to backfill, and you'll be happier in the long run because now you've got 3 national clients and they're much more in line with how you operate and become more efficient. So it's a good reminder.
Yeah. Yeah, no question, right? I mean, I think that it's important when there's those kind of decisions that are coming up to have a network of people that can give it to you for real and help you look at things a bunch of different ways. So, the thing that I took away, and I remember having a conversation after that meeting with Jim Stevens, and he just said, hey, sometimes if all your energy is being cooped into that, where do you get to kind of find that time for you to be creative and that kind of stuff? Because that's always something that I've held very dear. And the answer was I didn't have any time for that. So, the biggest advancements that I've made in my career is when I can have some of that like creativity time. And that's not necessarily like outdoors or working, but if I had an hour and a half and I can doodle and start kind of getting my ideas down and working on it, I can come up with some really, really cool shit. And then the next time that I have a break, it's all right, how am I going to figure out how to implement this? Right. And then how do I, the next time I do it, like if I don't have enough of those blocks, like, hey, how do I do the follow up and how do I make sure that the results on what my intentions were are going to get received on the other end? So,
we're all creators, man. Like having that free time. You used to run a newsletter. You were telling me before COVID, you had like how many email, hundreds or thousands, maybe, I don't know, but like motivational, throw some tunes in there.
Yeah.
I remember right before I was launching mine, I was picking your brain of like how you operated the thing. And that's fun. It's just a lot of fun to have that creative aspect.
Yeah. And that was something that I really enjoyed for a while. Right. It was Motivate Me Mondays. It had it was the quote. I love quotes. I think I even shared
you did
hundreds and hundreds of quotes,
it's a library for sure. I haven't even gone through all of them. No way.
And I would find a motivational video kind of deal. And then it was like, hey, the world needs haters was the mantra, kind of like, hey, watch me win, motherfuckers, has always kind of been my I had it going out to a lot of people and I was getting a lot of positive responses on it. And people still ask me about it to this day. But the truth is that when COVID started, I was in a really, really rough spot mentally. I was cooped up in a house with my kids who were online learning at 5 and 3 or 6 and 4, and I wasn't taking care of myself and I wasn't working out, and I just got in a really, really hard place. And I remember one time I'd always have Jenny proof these things before they would go out. And she's like, this isn't you at all. Like, this isn't you. If your thing's about being real, like just tell people that you're off. Right. And I was off for like a year, like I was in a bad place, depression, anxiety, all that stuff. So kind of when I got out of that, I'm trying to kind of revamp that, but more on a social media level and working with my social media team to help me kind of get what my vision is out there.
Well, it's a good segue. How can the listeners find you on social media?
Ted Liles, SIOR, at Instagram.
And we'll link to that. And also, we got a question that we ask all of the guests. What is success defined by Big Teddy Liles?
It's a loaded question, and I think that it's constantly evolving. If you would have asked me when I was 22, what does success look like? I'd be like, I want a big fucking house with a rad car, and that's what I want. I think that now at 40, I see I feel like I'm there. I'm at that level of success, where I don't really have a ton of wants. I mean, if I could have, I got my family and my unit, which is amazing. I got a great career and job and foundation that I built. My kids are good kids that like to play sports, and I love to hang out with them. And I got a great roof over my head. So, I mean, the only thing that's maybe lacking is a couple more like really fun family vacations, but we got one of those coming up. But yeah, success is kind of I think that when you get to a point where you're no longer wanting or needing additional things, yeah, I mean, I think that's it.
That's a great answer. It was a great conversation, Teddy. Thanks for popping on. And we'll post some information for the listeners in the show notes so you can connect with Teddy. And
you guys are rad. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Kick some ass. Whatever you need, I got you.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, brother. Have a good one.